Hi, welcome to this SQL tutorial video, and today we're going to look at table variables, temporary tables and common table expressions. So let's imagine you've got some sort of work to do where you need to create a temporary table to store some data so you can use it in a piece of code. Let's imagine on screen, I'm looking at a very basic table in the AdventureWorks database, the currency table. And what I want to do is I want to have a table that stores the currency code and name for some sort of work that I'm doing. I don't want to use this table directly. I want to store it temporarily so I can manipulate it. So one thing I could do is I could create a table variable. Now, we've talked about variables before. A variable's got to begin with an @ so you can create a variable that is any data type, as we've seen previously. I'll put a link to my variables video as part of this description. So in that video we talked about creating number variables, text variables, date variables. You can also do table variables. So let's call this @currency. So like with any variables, a variable's got to begin with the @ sign here, and the data type in this case is going to be table. And now, because it's a table, we need to build it and give it columns, which we do in circular brackets. And in order to do this correctly, we need to make sure that we're doing the same columns as the actual data that we're going to be dealing with. So if I go to sales currency and I look at the columns, the first one is an nchar3, then we've got an nvarchar50. So let us do the same thing. We'll call this code nchar3 and name nvarchar50. And then we can say insert into @currency because it's a table. So first of all, let me just run this. Those are the two columns we're going to insert into this. Like with all variables, they only exist when the process executes. So if I run this, in fact, I need to do one more thing. I need to, because this is a table, regardless of it being a variable, because it is a table, we can do a select star from it. So if I execute this whole lot, what we are looking at here is the result of this final select. So here's our table variable with code and name columns. Well, in fact, you can see the C code and C name here. We're inserting into our table, and then we do a select from another table, and there's the output. So if I just highlight this, it won't work because it's got to be executed all at once in order for SQL to A, create the variable, B, populate the variable, then C, output the variable. But when it's output, within this session, I can do all sorts here. Because it's my table, I've got to use the columns that I've created here. So if I run that completely, we get everything. Select star from currency, and here we get just those that begin with B, which is my second thing here. Now let's think about instead of using a table variable, then let's do this in a different way. We can do something called a temporary table. So let's get rid of that. And as with anything, ever so slightly syntactically, this is ever so slightly different. So we've got our select currency code and name from our table. What we can do now to create a temporary table is we can say select currency code name into, and because it's a temporary table, you've got to prefix it with a hash. So we'll do that. And further down here, we can say select star from. If I run that, it selects these two columns directly into this temporary table from this table, and then there's the output. Now there's some things to note here. This is really, really good if you're doing like a table with lots and lots of columns. Rather than create a table variable where you need to know the data types of each column and you need to build it, this builds it for you. So we haven't created anything as such. We haven't gone through the trouble of identifying each individual column. SQL's done it for us, and has done it. It's taken these two columns here and basically copied the makeup of those two columns to build this temporary table here. So that's good. In this example, we probably wouldn't use it. It's only a very small table, but depending on the size of the table and the amount of data, table variables are much better to kind of use. Something else to note is within this window, this temporary table exists. So if I highlight that by itself and run it, it is there. It exists. However, if I do a new window and I'll just copy that and paste it into here, it's not here. It doesn't exist here. It's not actually kind of physically here. It just exists in this little window. But unlike a table variable, which only exists while that script is running, a temporary table exists for as long as this window is open. So I can do that. I can do another one, and it'll know, oh, you mean that? Because I know what that is. It's a temporary table within this window. And so I can run that twice, and it's quite happy to do it. What you cannot do is you can't run the whole lot again, because that temporary table already exists. So SQL will say, hold on a minute, you've already created that temporary table within here. In order to use it again, you're going to have to drop it like you would any other table. And then you can do it again. So nice and tidy. I'll close that, and it's all tidied up. SQL's forgotten about that temporary table. That's all good. The last thing I want to look at is something called a CTE, or Common Table Expression. Funny things, CTEs. So again, syntactically different to the other two when you're creating these things. So we say with is the beginning of creating a CTE. The next part of the syntax is the name that you're going to give the CTE. It doesn't have a prefix of an at. It doesn't have a prefix of a hash. You just name it. So we can call it CTE, or we can call it my currency. We give it a name, then we start. So let me say as, and then we start with these brackets, and we've got to give it. We're not going to build a table here. We're going to give it some SQL in order to populate our CTE. So let me just do select star from sales.currency, which is what we were doing before. Now we can do a select from the CTE name. So I'm going to run that, and you can see we haven't created any columns. We haven't we haven't gone to the trouble of worrying about data types or anything like that. And also SQL itself, it doesn't know that it exists. It's similar to a table variable, where as soon as the SQL code is finished running, it forgets about it. It doesn't know it anymore. So in order to run it, you've got to kind of run it in its entirety. And nice and kind of neatly within here, you can change the columns to say, I only want to see those two. Run it again. It's nice and easy, nice and quick. What's really important about CTEs, and what you need to remember, is as soon as you've created a CTE, you have to use it in the next bit of SQL. So if I here said select star from that, as soon as I've got that in there, that doesn't like it anymore. The CTE itself only exists immediately after it's been created. So if something occurs between the creation and when you want to use it, SQL will forget all about it. So if I try and run that, hold on, that's not a very good example. What this is running is this bit in between. In a second, it should stop and say, there you go. I don't know what my currency is because this bit in between has ran and caused SQL to forget about the bit above, the CTE. If I put that, comment that out and run that, where it's quite happy, all of a sudden that's all good. There are something else. There's something else about the CTE. So if I do a comma and I name another CTE, so I'm going to call this my sales as, and we'll do select star from sales order detail. Let's do that, or sales order header. It now is happy with. We can now run this because it sees this creation as one block. So it doesn't see the end of this being, it doesn't see this kind of being something in between this and this. Because of this comma, it just sees this as two CTEs being created in one block. This is the next step. So this is fine. So if I run that, it'll return that. Let me try and run my sales. So what it doesn't like is, just because I've created these two here in one block, it allows this because that is, there's nothing between this CT and its creation here, but it won't allow that because this is between this CT select and its creation. If I comment that out, that'll run because it's quite happy now. It was created here within this block. This is all one block, and it's been used here directly after its creation. So that's all good. So what you can do here is you might have something. Let's just do sales debt, and we'll do sales order detail, and we'll just do select star. And here we'll call this sales head. Sales order head select star. So we've already got that. So what you now can do with your CTE created there is you can say select star from sales debt, or sales head first of all, inner join sales debt on sh dot equals so these two are temporary CTEs. They don't generally exist as themselves. They only exist as part of this bit of code. Because you created them within the same block, it accepts the use here, but they've got to be used together. You can't use, like I showed a second ago, you can't do select star from sales head and then below it select star from sales debt, because as soon as you do the first one, all of this block is forgotten about, this CTE creation. Useful things CTEs, but they are a little bit complicated to get your head around. That's the end of this video. I hope you found it helpful.